Okay, it is 6 p.m. and I will call this public meeting to order. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? If so, please declare it. I have no hands up. So we'll move forward with number 3, which is the purpose of tonight's meeting, D14 2023-009 439-445 Thousand Islands Parkway. So what I will do is I'll read our synopsis and then I will turn it over to the senior planner who's with us this evening. Personal information collected at this public hearing is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making decision on this matter. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments are collected to form part of the minutes which are available to the public. Questions regarding this collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning. The purpose of public meetings is to present planning applications in a public forum as required by the Planning Act. Following presentations by the applicant or staff, council members will have an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or further information. The meeting will then be open to the public for comments and questions. When you speak, please provide your name and address for recording in the minutes. All comments should be directed to myself, the chair of the meeting. The applicant will be provided the opportunity to address public questions once all members of the public have made their submissions. For the applications being presented tonight, a report and recommendation will be forthcoming to council. Following a council decision notice will be circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. If a person or public body would have an ability to appeal the decision of the council to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the township before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. Okay, so we're going back to 439-445 Thousand Islands Parkway. Madam Planner, do you want to give us a synopsis? Okay, perfect.
Good evening, and through you, your worship. This is an application for a zoning bylaw amendment for a property located at 439 to 445 Thousand Islands Parkway. This property is the subject of an active application for a site plan control that staff are currently processing for a proposed corporate lodge retreat with 5 suites. The property is approximately 1.4 hectares in size. The existing zoning of the property is tourist commercial and provincially significant wetland. Access to the property is through 2 existing registered rights-of-way over adjacent residentially zoned properties. The application is proposing zoning relief to permit access to commercial use through the residentially zoned properties by way of existing easements. Essentially, the application is seeking the continued use of the existing rights-of-way over the adjacent properties for the proposed redevelopment of the subject property with a small-scale commercial use. The property currently contains a vacant dwelling and a detached accessory structure, as well as 2 existing docks. Just going to share the site plan. Sorry, I'll just continue. The proposed site plan that staff are reviewing as part of the site plan control application includes the proposed building for the corporate lodge retreat, a proposed garage with an accessory dwelling unit on the upper floor, a proposed second garage that's smaller with the studio on the upper floor, and that accessory structure is being reconstructed on the footprint of an existing structure on the property. The proposed development's been found to comply with all applicable zoning provisions of the bylaw, with the exception of the proposed access through the residentially zoned properties. The CRCA has provided comments indicating no concerns or objections to the application. The St. Lawrence Parks Commission was also circulated on both the zoning amendment application and the site plan application. and they've issued a building permit for the reconstruction of the detached garage on the same footprint. Notice of this statutory public meeting has been provided in accordance with the Planning Act. To date, staff have received one telephone call from a member of the public with questions that were addressed by planning staff. As well, one piece of correspondence was received this afternoon. It has been posted to the Civic Web. Staff did respond to the member of the public to address the questions that they submitted. And at the discretion of council, staff are prepared to address those questions here this evening as well. As this application is technical in nature, there is a report with a recommendation from staff included in the package this evening for council's consideration. I note that the agent for the owner is in attendance virtually this evening, and I'd just like to thank you and indicate that I'm happy to address any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions from council? Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. So they are legal right-of-ways. The access points to the property as it stands right now, they are legal right-of-ways. Is there a road association, road association associated with these road and accesses that you are aware of? And in regards to the correspondence that came, can you enlighten us on the questions and what the answers were on those also, please? Thank you.
Through your worship, so the access, the right of way on the western side of the property is very small. It's only roughly 87 square feet that we're talking about in terms of the right of way access over the adjacent property. On the east side, there is Rose Island Lane, which forms the right of way access on that side of the property. I'm not aware of any road association for that. And with respect to the questions, staff did circulate the questions to members of council. There were some questions that weren't really related to the application at hand. The first being a concern around oil spillage from the existing oil tank in the vacant dwelling. Staff have spoken with the CBO. The CBO is aware of the situation and has commitment from the owner to remove the oil tank appropriately at the time of demolition, once a demolition permit is issued, as well as to undertake any necessary remediation for that. There was a question as to whether there'd be any blasting associated with the construction on the site, and staff have confirmed with the agent that no, there is blasting will not be occurring as part of the development. There was a question around heavy equipment usage on the driveway and who would be responsible for maintenance or restoration should any impacts to the right of way occur. And again, the owner is prepared to restore any impact to the right of way through the construction, which will be temporary. There was a concern around there being a large volume of traffic associated with the commercial use, and staff note that the proposed use is targeted to a particular segment, being a corporate lodge and retreat, and that it's fairly small scale in that it's only going to have 5 suites, and what I understand is a maximum occupancy of about 8 to 10 persons. So it is quite small scale. And then there was just a question about the special exception that staff are recommending later on in the agenda through the staff report. And it was explained to the member of the public that that's the process by which zoning relief is granted through the zoning bylaw is to create a special zone that grants that relief specific to that particular property. And I think that addresses the questions the member of the public submitted. Thank you.
Okay, so that answers Councillor Maybe's questions. Any other questions for the planner? Go ahead, Councillor Groh.
Would this be subject to site plan control, as I understand, because it's commercial? Is that correct?
Through you, your worship, yes, staff are processing an active application for site plan control.
Okay,
And
thank you.
there will be a registered site plan control agreement on the property at the conclusion.
Thank you. And in broad strokes, the comments brought by the neighboring property here at 437, what assurances on things like traffic and so on can you offer these people outside of a verbal, don't worry about it? Is there anything a township can do that would give them assurance that their residential property is not being unduly affected by this lane?
Through the analysis of the application, through your worship, staff have concluded that it is a small scale commercial use. The St. Lawrence Parks Commission has indicated that they would be willing to examine and review a potential second dedicated commercial access for this property in the future. So that is an option that could be pursued if there are concerns. That would be subject to a site plan control modification and a traffic brief that would be submitted by the property owner to the satisfaction of both the St. Lawrence Parks Commission and Township.
Follow up? You're good. Counselor Lackey, go ahead.
Through you, your worship, to the planner. Just looking at the diagram, being familiar with the property, is it not the first property on Rose Island Lane? So the access would be the first property in turning down Rose Island Lane. So it would not affect the rest of the residents beyond it.
Through your worship, yes, that's correct. That the lane is located on the abutting residential property. The concerns received from the public through the correspondence relate to the property to the west. Municipal address is 437 Thousand Islands Parkway, and that is the location of a very small easement that's roughly 87 square feet in size that is required to be passed in order to access the subject property.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Counselor Fody.
Thank you, your worship, and through you to our planner. Is there any indication by the applicant whether the owner intends to live in this facility themselves or not?
Through you, your worship, the tourist commercial zone does permit an accessory dwelling unit, and one is proposed here. I would have to defer to the agent, Mr. Preston, for that particular question.
It's permitted, but we don't know that the person's necessarily going to live there. Right?
That's my understanding. Mr. Preston, I think, is unmuted his mic to offer some thoughts on that.
Okay, Mr. Preston, you're the applicant on behalf of the owner. Do you know the answer to that question, sir?
Yes, my client plans to live there. It's going to be seasonal. My client lives in the
Mr. Preston, Mr.
Yeah.
Preston, I need to stop you there. We're having a hard time hearing you. You're kind of garbled. Do you have something over top of your microphone by chance?
I don't.
There, you're much clearer now.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so this is going to be a seasonal use building, essentially. My client lives in the Cayman Islands. He's the CEO of a financial firm down there, so it will be used to entertain executives, things like that on occasion. But I assume during the summer he will be there permanently. So it's also somewhere he plans to live in future when he retires on a permanent basis. But there's not going to be, if the building's in use, he will be there. My understanding.
So the answer to your question is that they aren't living there permanent, full-time, only there when the business is in use, and that the intention is that when they retire, they would be moving to that property. That is the anticipated. Am I correct, Mr. Preston?
That is correct.
Okay. Go ahead, follow up.
I do. Thank you, your worship. The neighbors mentioning of the fuel oil in the basement of the home. Is that a fact or a potential of? Has there been a fuel oil spill there?
I think that I'll leave that to the planner.
Through you, your worship, I spoke to the CBO today. Building staff as well as fire staff have attended the site for inspection. The CBO did note that, yes, there is an existing oil tank there, and that the issue with respect to spillage is quite small, almost negligent at this point.
I know like any other spill, it's hard to quantify. Has anybody put a quantity on it? Like, is the tank drained out with 100 gallons in it at some point? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Through you, your worship, the CBO indicated that the tank was empty and that there was a small, less than a cup kind of
Oh,
that was
okay.
visible beside the tank, very
Okay.
small quantity.
Okay, all right. It's just that, as some of us know, there has been other properties in our township with significant fuel oil spills and
Well,
you know,
If there was a significant issue, MOE would have to be involved at that point. So,
but I just didn't want us as council to overlook something that might be of a serious consequence to a new buyer or an applicant. Thank you.
okay. Anyone else with questions? I see no hands up here in council chambers. So I'll go to the public, the attendees that are online. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand using the Zoom raise hand function. And then we have some people in the gallery here. So if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand, or I have no other raised hands here in the room. And I have two. So Mr. Craig, if you could come forward, turn on the camera and use the microphone, please, and thank you. If you just want to sit down at the chair and turn the camera on, if you can.
Lower left corner.
Should say start video. Got it. Perfect, thank you.
Yes, through you, your worship. My name is Bruce Craig. I live at 458 Thousand Island Parkway. And number one, I'm kind of surprised that township can alter a legal agreement such as a right-of-way that was legally drawn up by private property owners. And perhaps if they knew that was the case when they penned the agreement, then they might not have penned it if they knew it could be changed this easily. But anyhow, I'd like to quickly state that there are other possibilities here rather than disturbing the neighbors at 437, the Gilberts. Traffic coming in their driveway going to shine right into their living room, bedrooms, etc., and traffic coming at all hours of the night, day and night. And I noticed from our planning report that there's a concern on behalf of the Parkway Commission to protect the visual character of the Parkway. What about the visual character of the neighboring people? I would think that would be of more concern. It hasn't been demonstrated how granting a new separate proper entrance off the Parkway to this commercial concern would adversely affect the visual impact of the Parkway. So number one, the proper thing to do would be not to rubber stamp this application, but defer it and give the parties time to get things right. Now, we all know that the St. Lawrence Park Commission does not easily grant driveway permits, but they do. There have been one or two on the Parkway west of this location in the past couple of years. We're all familiar with the Huck Marine Resort in Rockport and their new large storage buildings on the Parkway east of Rockport. Parks Commission did not want to grant them a driveway permit, but they did. So let's not, inconvenience people when there are alternatives. Second alternative is there's another entranceway to the property off Rose Island Lane. When you come in Rose Island Lane, there are no houses in that immediate area that are going to be inconvenienced. And there's immediate access to the right, to the west, off Rose Island Lane to this property. There's a clearing that's mowed, and this is a vacant property, but they keep it mowed, and there's a clearing there that's mowed. So my thing is, if they cannot get a driveway permit off the Parkway directly, I would suggest that you just go with the right of way to the east off Rose Island Lane, give them, and they could get immediate access to their property. They're not going to inconvenience anybody. So my thing is, please don't just rubber stamp this, give it some thought, and get it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Ma'am? State your name for the record, please.
My name is Julie Gilbert. I actually live in Coburg, but my parents live at 437. So I'm just concerned about the oil spill that is being listed as being just like a small insignificant amount, like a cup of oil. The reason that oil was discovered was because I was walking, my dog ran onto their property, and I went over to get her, and I could smell the oil coming from that building quite a distance away. And so when I went over to look in the basement's full of water, and there's an oil slick on top of the water. So for them to say that it's just a small cup, I don't know how they would have figured that. And I wondered that myself. Is the oil tank empty? Was the oil tank half full? What has spilled? And I was more concerned with our well water, the water that we're drinking. So those are just some of my concerns, just the environmental impact of my parents' well water, the environmental impact of the marsh that's at the end of their property. Will there be docks that are built out and lots of boats and that kind of thing? Because there's a lot of, natural marshland there.
To that question, Madam Planner, I believe that it was discussed that it was a PSW, so provincially significant wetland. Did I hear PSW be talked about?
Yes, a small portion of the property is zoned provincially significant wetland. Through the site plan control application, the applicant did submit an environmental site assessment. So an ecologist did review and provide a report in support of the site plan control application, noting that the property had previously been used as a fishing lodge. And an examination of all the context, they concluded that they were satisfied with a 30-meter setback for any proposed development, and the proposed site plan complies with that recommendation.
To the question that was asked about docking, is there any additional docks being added to this property through this site plan control as well?
My understanding and review of the applications is that there are the 2 existing docks, and there's no plans to expand those existing marine facilities through the development.
All right,
So-
thank you.
You're welcome. All right, any other questions for you, ma'am? Okay, I've got hands up online, so I'm gonna go to Mr. Preston and then I'll come back to council, and we have to get done here shortly. So go ahead, Mr. Preston.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I was unaware of this oil condition. I don't think my client has ever been in that house. It's pretty dilapidated. He wasn't aware of it either. I'll say, well, it was necessary to remediate it, but I've never been aware of any smell of oil or seen any signs of it, but it will be taken care of. And regarding the docks, yeah, we were told that there'd be no additional marine facilities allowed on this property.
Okay, so I have 2 more questions, and then we're going to end the discussion to move on to council. So I have Councillor Maybe and then Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, I would recommend that we have the well tested to make sure that it's not got oil in it. There's obviously one there that was benefiting the house, so it's not that tough to get that done. I would imagine to ensure that we have this oil issue at bay, or just to verify the condition of the groundwater around there also, if there is any. Again, it's a fairly sloped piece of property that goes right to the water's edge. So again, is there any evidence of the oil at water's edge anywhere also in that area? Again, that shouldn't take too much and shouldn't be too difficult to actually verify. Thank you.
Cody, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question was for Ms. Gilbert. Do you have a time frame as to when you noticed this oil? Like what year, what season? This spring.
This spring.
Okay, thank you.
So it's been noted by the consultant that they will be looking into this as well. And the planner will address it as well.
Through you, just wanted to note that as part of the demolition permit, the owner is required to sign an affidavit that speaks to the cleanup and remediation resulting from the demolition of a structure on the property, and the CBO has indicated that they want to closely monitor the demolition and have it undertaken in the proper way so that the oil tank can be removed properly.
So they'll be on site as demolition of those particular items are being done.
That's my understanding, and that would be kind of a two-stage process to ensure that the above grade portion of the house is removed, and then
Below grade.
the intact oil tank can be removed appropriately.
Thank you. Okay, I have no other hands up online. So with that, we will move to adjourn the public meeting, moved by Counselor Jameson, seconded by Counselor Maybe, that the public meeting adjourn. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. Thank you.